Okay, hi everyone. So I'm going to start with by sharing the screen and telling you a little bit about what we're going to be doing today. So this picture that you see here is the picture that you see here is of Tubal Cain. Who is Tubal Cain? We'll see in a minute who Tubal Cain is, who's killing two people here. And we'll find out who these people are in a minute. So I'm going to start with a little bit of genealogy, okay? So you have Adam and Eve, and Adam had Cain and Abel, right? And then later on, they had a son who's called Seth. And Seth has a long genealogy that goes down all the way to Noah. And he had three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japhet. Abel, of course, is Hevel. He had no progeny. And here you have Cain, all right? Enoch, whose name is Hanoch, Irad, Yael, Metushael, Ada, and Lamech, and Selah. He had Lamech, or Lamech, who got married to Ada and Selah. Right? These people are characters that we're going to be seeing later on. And Ada and Lamech had Yaval and Yuval. And Lamech and Selah had Tubal, Cain, and Naamah, a woman. Naamah is a woman's name. Now, if you notice along the line here, if we look at the progeny coming from Enosh, wait, sorry, not from Enosh. Yeah, from Enosh, right. Coming from Seth. Seth has Enosh. And by the way, the name Enosh means humanity, right? So Seth has Enosh. And then from humanity, right, Enosh then has names that are very similar to these names, like Canaan and Cain. I know this might sound boring, but I just want you to pay attention to some of the names. Mahalalel looks like Mahuyael, all right? And then you have Enoch, Hanoch, who's the same name here. Metushelach, who is Methuselah, the longest living person. Lamech, same name as Lamech here, and then Noah. But in the Bible, it's very clear that these are two separate genealogies, the genealogy coming from Cain and the genealogy coming from Seth or Enosh, okay? So this is important. Also try to remember this when we come to my Midrash later on, which for a change is going to be the Midrash that I wrote, okay? So of course, the first question all of us are going to ask here is, look at this genealogy here. And in this genealogy, what happened to Eve? She's no longer here. At least in this genealogy that I made, we have Adam and Eve. But in this particular picture, what happened to Eve, right? How did Adam have another son? According to the Bible, they had a third son, Seth. Okay. Now, but she doesn't appear here. All right. So
where are the women?
A very good question. Okay. So there are no women here except for Noah, who I am asking questions. Did Noah have a daughter? Right. And so that's a good question. All right. So you do have wives. In other words, Lamech gets married to Ada and Selah, and they have children. And here's the one woman, Naamah. All right. And remember who she is too. So you have here all of these different ways of looking at, of course, this group of people here, what happens to them?
Wiped out.
They're completely wiped out. And this group of people go on to Noah, and we know what happens there as well. Okay. So in the Midrash, right, Lamech took two wives, one for sexual pleasure and the other for procreation. And how did he manage to have the one for sexual pleasure? He gave her a drug. See, Norman, in those days, they had drugs that could induce barrenness, all right? You had medical knowledge in those days, right? Apparently, all right? So that she would not give birth. And the other sat alone like a widow. In other words, Lamech's behavior, according to the Midrash, shows that there's spiritual decline from one generation to the next, and how corrupt the flood generation was, right? Imagine having two wives, one for sexual pleasure and the other for procreation. Okay, and there are different traditions about Ada, right? One, Ada is the one for sexual pleasure, all right, and they even find a linguistic connection to her name, Ada, connected with the word mitaden, having pleasure, Edna. I don't know if any of you remember, but the word Edna is associated with Sarah, who complains that I no longer have Edna when God says she's going to have a child. All right. Anyway, so this is the whole idea of Ada being beautiful, also. Okay. And but then there's another tradition that he married Ada to have children. All right. And there they say that Ada is connected, that he was repelled by her. So whatever. The Midrash doesn't have to be consistent, but it's interesting that they that both of them have. So Ada had two sons, and Sila had a son and a daughter. Okay. By the way, Tamar Kadari, whose name is on this article here, if you ever, I've mentioned this many times, if you ever need to write something about women in the Bible, look under the jwa.org encyclopedia, and you'll find all the Midrash and Agadah summarized by Tamar Kadari, and it's a very good resource to know about. So here's a picture of Lamech, William Blake, a picture of Lamech and his two wives, 18th century, right? And here, all right, you don't know yet what's happening, but notice there's a dead person here. We'll see in a minute what's happened here, according to the biblical story. Some of you may even remember it, but it doesn't matter right now. And here is Lamech tearing his head out, right, at what he's done. And here are his two wives, who are, one of them is undressed, and the other one, we don't know if she's dressed or not, but her breasts are covered. Maybe this one is Ada. Okay. Now we have the Midrash. The Midrash relates that after Lamech unwittingly, by mistake, killed Cain and Tuval Cain, Ada and Sila found him with his two victims. Now, let's go back to this picture. And here we have Lamech, who has killed Cain and his son Tuval Cain. Okay, now the mystery is cleared up. All right. So in the Midrash, So in the Midrash, so they bring him home, and right after he kills them, he demands to have sexual relations with them, and they refuse. They don't want to give birth to cursed offspring. All right. And so this is very interesting. And also, meanwhile, back on the ranch, Adam has withdrawn from his wife, from Eve, for 130 years following the murder of Abel. Okay, so we have, all right, so we go back to this genealogy. And so here's Adam restraining from having sex. And finally, after 100 years, he now has Seth. Okay, this is the imagination of the Midrash. And so in the end, Ada and Sila do somehow or another agree to whatever Adam has to say about that. The connection, I'm not sure what it is. And they give themselves to Lamech, which ends up in the birth of Noah. And also Adam listens, sorry, this is probably a mistake. He's Adam's verdict. Whatever it is, they end up having Noah in the long run. And Adam listens to the two women, and he has Seth, who ends up being the progenitor of the line of Shem, the Semites. That's us. Okay. So here's the story. Louise, you want to read it? This is in Genesis. Sure. Genesis.
Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is too great to bear, since you have banished me this day from the soil, and I must avoid your presence and become a restless wanderer on earth. Anyone who meets me may kill me. The Lord said to him, I promise, if anyone kills Cain, sevenfold vengeance shall be taken on him. And the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest anyone who met him should kill him. Cain left the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden.
Go on.
Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. And he then founded a city and named the city after his son Enoch. To Enoch was born Irad, and Irad begot Mehujael, and Mehujael begot Methusael, and Methusael begot Lamech. Lamech took to himself two wives. The name of the one was Adah, and the name of the other was Zillah.
So here we have a nice picture, a 16th century engraving where Lamech here is in the center, and he has his two wives, Sila and Ada. Notice how they're not dressed, or rather in the state of undressed, all right? And the print is called The Story of the First Men, okay? So this is here, you have children in the foreground playing, right, with like children would, right? And possibly doing bad things. Right? They look somewhat destructive. And here in the background, you have the cities, all right? And the flourishing civilization of some sort, okay. Go on, Louise.
Adah bore Jabal. He was the ancestor of those who dwell in tents and amidst herds, and the name of his brother was Jubal. He was the ancestor of all who play the lyre and the pipe. As for Zillah, she bore Tubal-Cain, who forged all implements of copper and iron, and the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah.
Okay, so what do we learn about these children, right? Yabal, Yubal, and Tubal-Cain. What can we say about them?
They're as different as Cain and Abel.
Yeah.
Okay, that too. But what can we say about them? They're the ancestors of what? Ancestors of
The musicians, or
okay,
the creative people,
right.
and the metal workers,
right?
Yeah.
And the first one,
who dwell in tents,
okay, in other words, these are
and the shepherds.
right. These are the founders of civilization, right? They're the founders of civilization.
Wow.
And here we have a picture. This is a bas relief, or you say bas relief, I'm not sure. You have here Nama, who's teaching reading, all right, which is not in the, it's not in the,
Listed, right?
not listed. And Yuval, who's the father of music. And here you have, I guess this is the music here, or is he the metal person?
Yeah, it looks like he's metalworking.
I don't know, there are bells here. It's hard to tell. Well, anyway, it's listed as if he's the founder, father of music. Okay. Here's another picture, which is very, very interesting. And Naamah ends up, for some reason, being the mother of all demons who rise up from the depths of the sea to seduce the men of the world, all right? And the Hebrew says here, V'achot Tubal-Cain Naamah. Maybe they're taking the word Naamah, Naim, as, by the way, the same root as my word, not my name, Naomi, which means pleasant or sweet or something like that, Naim. Maybe they're playing on that, you know, but she's very clearly a very threatening image here to some people. And it sounds a little bit like the story of Lilith, which maybe I'll come back to again in one of the future classes. So here, there again, so the same Midrash that mentions the marriage of Naamah, of Tubal-Cain to Noah, all right? The sages give two seemingly contradictory origins of her names, right? All her deeds were pleasant, ne'imim, while the other one is she would beat on a drum, min emet, right? she would beat on a drum to draw people to idol worship, right? This is in the same Midrash. And so the Midrash states she was so beautiful that she was responsible for the incident mentioned in Genesis 6. I don't know if any of you remember that, but the God saw the daughters, the sons of gods, the angels, if you want, saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they cohabited with them. They took them for wives. And so this was a little bit too much for God, who had to destroy them, because what would happen if angels have children with human women?
Right.
They can live forever. That's a real problem. So according to this Midrash, Naamah was one of the daughters of humans that caused the angels to descend to earth and to fornicate with them. And this is in the Zohar. All of this is, you can find that if the Zohar interests you. And here is the Zohar, all right, where it says, why is it written that the sister of Tubal Cain was Naamah? Rabbi Yitzchak said she was a righteous woman and pleasing in her deeds, all right? Rabbi Abahu said, the simple sense of scripture indicates that she was learned in metalworking like her brother Tubal Cain, as is implied by he was the progenitor of every implement of bronze and iron, and the sister of Tubal Cain, Naamah, right? He invented this craft and his sister with him, as is written, and the sister of Tubal Cain, Naamah, she was skilled like him, all right? The and the sister joined the preceding statement. Rabbi Bolt said she was the mother of demons. She bore them. For look, the mother of Ashmedai, king of the demons, is named Naamah. Okay, I don't know if this interests you, but what's interesting about this is how often the Midrash and like to somehow or another, they can't be happy with the good woman. They have to somehow or another find bad in the woman as well. And then finally finish the story.
Okay. And Lamech said to his wives, Adah and Zillah, hear my voice. O wives of Lamech, give ear to my speech. I have slain a man for wounding me, and a lad for bruising me. If Cain is avenged sevenfold, then Lamech 77-fold.
Okay, and this is repeating what God had said earlier. And so you have here a situation where it's not clear that it's by accident, right? This is from the Montreal Cathedral mosaics. It's actually very interesting. And so here you have, it doesn't look like an accident here, right?
No.
So it's very interesting that, it's not clear. And here you have something which is really interesting, right? On the phrase, that you just read. And here, this is very, very violent, right? Very, very violent killing. So not clear that we're talking about accidents. And here's another picture where he accidentally kills Cain with an arrow, right? And what's interesting about this particular picture, the French manuscript, 13th century, what's interesting about this?
He's in a tree.
Yeah, what does the tree look like?
The burning bush.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? He suddenly becomes some sort of a martyr. This is Christian books. Very interesting, and you can see the arrow is in his. I assume this is the arrow, or whatever it is. And here the son is trying to. This is Tubal Cain. He's trying to stop him. So it's not clear. Did he kill both of them or not? Okay, so yeah, but there's one more picture, I think. Here we go. It's very interesting. So look at the right? So here you have Lamech with his son killing Cain. So, and here it looks like he's trying to stop him. So in the very first one that we saw, right? He's killed both of them. in the, and here too. Oh, actually, it's not clear. Here's only one person here with the William Blake picture. Okay. Oh, with these, this is already in the middle of the Midrash that we have these pictures. So, okay. So, I begin. This is a Midrash that I wrote, which I called "The End of the Line," an ecological Midrash. All right. And it begins this way with the, you know, with the with these verses, with Adam knowing his wife again. Right? Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and named him Seth, meaning God has provided me with another offspring in place of Abel, for Cain had killed him. And to Seth, in turn, a son was born, and he named him Enosh, Enosh or Enoch, right? It was then that people began to invoke the Lord by name. When Lamech had lived 182 years, he begot a son, and he named him Noach, saying, "This one will provide us relief from our work and from the toil of our hands, out of the very soil which the Lord placed under a curse." Okay, so these are the quotations that I begin my midrash with, and then we have these other midrashim here, not midrashim, another verses from the Bible, or actually they're the same ones. Okay, let me see how many readers do we need. 1, 2. Okay, let me, as I go through them, I'll give you all numbers. So Debbie, number 1, Norman, number 2. We'll have pictures in between. Susan, number 3. Francine, number 4. Jill, number 5. I'm not sure what number I'm up to. Sherilyn, number 6. Toby, number 7. Stevie, are you there? Number 8.
Yes.
Okay. And Louise again, right? Number, I guess it's 9. And whoever was number 2, oh, that would be 9. And then whoever was number 1 before, we'll read the last one, okay? Try to remember your numbers. I may have made mistakes with my counting, but okay, we're almost there. Okay, so as I said, it's called The End of the Line, an ecological midrash. It begins with the quotations, and so whoever's number 1 should begin.
Okay. All of humanity gathered to pay their last respects to Adam at his funeral. The 2 families of Adam descended from his 2 sons, Cain and Seth, sat in the shade of the date tree grove sipping hot mint tea. At first, their voices were hushed and respectful as befitted the occasion, but later the tone became loud and recriminatory. Both families were related by blood to Adam, but there the resemblance ended, for the 2 clans differed in both character and lifestyle.
Cain's descendants were polished and fastidious in their tastes. Since they did not believe in having many children, this last generation had remained childless. In contrast, the descendants of the Seth Enosh branch of the family were a pious and unpretentious group of shepherds whose main talent was in nurturing animals. They had many children and praised God for his bountifulness. Inevitably, the polite chatter of the 2 clans turned into a heated discussion. The topic, which family deserved to continue Adam's line?
So we have here, right, Tuval Cain is in his forge, and we have more pictures of Tuval Cain in his forge, and another picture of Tuval Cain at his forge. Okay, 3rd reader.
Tuval Cain, son of Lamech, listened attentively to the attacks of his pious relatives. He found it difficult to sit silently while they besmirched all that his family stood for. The Enosh side insisted they were a chosen people. Tuval Cain asked his cousin Jared, "Why do you consider yourself chosen?" "We are the only ones worthy of this distinction," Jared claimed. "When Adam decided to begin a new family, it was a way of punishing your ancestor Cain for having murdered Hevel. Since the curse of Cain is on you, we are certainly the ones chosen to carry on the line." "Yes," Enoch, son of Jared, added, "when Adam had another child at the late age of 130, it was because he was dissatisfied with you. Our ancestral progenitor, Seth, was meant to replace his favorite son, Hevel, murdered by your ancestor Cain."
What nonsense, Tuval Cain countered. "You may not know this, but my two brothers and I were named to commemorate Hevel." "That meant nothing to Adam," Jared countered obstinately. "He didn't think your father's attempt at making amends was enough. That's why he had Seth, to ensure that his family line would not die out." "We three Kevils are substitute enough," Tuval Cain responded. "Each one of us is making his mark on society. Have anyone in your branch who equals the four of us in talents? You know me. I am a master forger and builder, an artist. Yaval, my brother, manages vast estates and the affairs of men. Yuval plays the horn and writes music, which gives people much pleasure. Even our sister Naamah, who has a beautiful voice, does delicate sewing and gives pleasure to the eye."
Mahalal admitted appreciatively that they did enjoy listening to their music and seeing their artistry, but after a pause, he ridiculed their achievements. "You may be talented, but you lack a purpose. None of you have children. You've been too intent on creating things." Tuval Cain counterattacked. "It is true that the four of us have decided against having children, but it is ridiculous to regard it as a curse. It is a decision which each one of us has made personally. That may be, but how can you continue a family line without children?" pointed out Lamach. Tuval Cain had to admit that the debate over the chosen family was academic as long as his side remained childless. He listened some more to his simple yet articulate relatives in the hope of learning something from them.
Noach, son of Lamach, was detailing the responsibilities involved in caring for animals, large and small. "We have a secluded oasis-like area which is ideal for grazing. Animals don't fear us and we don't harm them. We all live together in harmony." While Noah was describing his pastoral life, a young man with a straggly beard interrupted him. He cried out, pointing to Tuval Cain, "The end is near for you, O son of Cain. You are doomed. The ancient curse is about to be carried out. Even your name, Havel, conjures up vanity, mourning, nothingness, evil, and woe." Tuval Cain was offended by this diatribe. "This is going too far."
He started to leave, but felt compelled to stop, for one of Noah's daughters had just begun to speak. She was an unusually attractive young woman, almost as striking as his sister Naamah. Her speech was very persuasive as she talked rhapsodically about their pastoral existence. "Our lifestyle dates back to the Garden of Eden. In Adam and Eve's time, one didn't have to work for one's bread. In those days, we were in partnership with the earth. People Animals and the land did not compete with each other. Life was better and simpler in those ancient times. That may be, but today there are too many people in the world for us to wait for fruit to drop from trees. The world has progressed and become more complicated. There is no going back, Cain said.
Who's the next reader?
Stevie,
Okay.
Oh, I don't know what happened to Susan was supposed to read. No?
look,
I
Stevie was
read
at,
already.
so
I'm number 8.
you are. You're on.
You're on. I was
Okay.
7.
Okay. But look at the consequences of competition, the concomitant inequality and poverty that exist. Those who are responsible for this a state of affairs will be punished, she insisted. Surely not our clan, countered Cain, for we are the purveyors of food, shelter, and clothing to mankind. Society depends on our contribution. But look at what you have done in the process. You have destroyed the natural resources around you by hunting and by uprooting trees and plant life. This woman had hit the sore spot. It's true. The trees are not replacing themselves as fast as they used to. Cain was forced to admit, if there is there any truth to her claim? Is she living closer to paradise than I am? It was too complicated. He had no answer. He wondered about this forceful woman. She was more than his match.
The sun was about to set. Cain reviewed the day's events. It had been an unusual day. Not one female member of the Enosh family had approached the Cain branch. Normally, at family gatherings such as these, the women and their young daughters would be after the 3 of them. Cain and his brothers had much to offer on the marriage market, but today no one had shown the slightest interest in him. Maybe it was time for him to take the initiative. That attractive young woman speaker has possibilities, he thought. She is more intelligent than the rest of them. We might be compatible. Perhaps we could work out a compromise between our differing lifestyles.
He walked over with the intention of introducing himself. Noah's daughter saw him coming and deliberately turned her back on him. He was taken aback. She's not interested in me. He faced a harsh truth. She has given up on me. Does she have an intimation of my future that is denied me? Suddenly he was wary. Could it be that the vanity that they had introduced to the world would erase the memory of their accomplishments? Cain prayed that it would not be, that future generations would remember the family of Cain.
Okay. I, haven't read this for a while. I wrote this in 1985. What do you think about it? I mean, is it relevant to us today? Let me stop the sharing for a minute, and then I do have some questions, but let me just, before I put some of the prepared questions, what do you think of this?
Very much relevant in terms of the environment, especially.
What's your feeling about the 2 families? I mean, and by the way, it's very much, what I'm guilty of here is what we call binary thinking, right? That it's either the good people and the bad people, so to speak. In other words, and there seems to be no compromising. Yeah, Francine, you're mute. Yeah.
They're not listening to each other, which is still the situation today.
Okay. So in other words, people are, how should I do it? They go this way,
Right,
then this way.
right. They don't see the other's point of view.
They
No,
may
they
physically, listen, but they don't hear, or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe they physically hear, but they don't listen. I always confuse the 2 words. In fact, I think this week in my blog, I probably confused the 2, but okay. At the end. What else strikes you here about the Cain branch?
about valuing the family over having children over not having children.
Okay, so there's two things there, okay? Yeah, Jill?
I mean, I just looked at it, it's like one way or another, you can't have both. Like you can't have like be artistic and have a family or vice versa with the other family.
Okay, which today we realize is not true, but there were thoughts like that in the past, right? That, you know, you have to give, especially women, you'd have to give up your career, you know, while you were having children. But the whole idea today where a lot of people push off getting married, you know, and, you know, or accumulating things. I mean, there's a lot of that there, but it's again, it's very binary. I don't really think I developed the characters, you know, everyone stood for something as opposed to, but on the other hand, you know, you do have the two branches of the family, and one is destined to be killed off, right? Now, which one is destined to be killed off?
The ones without children.
Yeah, the ones
The
without.
ones without children, but also it's the standard bearers of
the
Of-
trades.
Cain.
of civilization. Right?
Oh,
So I have here a couple of questions. We may have already even gone through them, but I'll just share the screen again. Okay. So first of all, I put this in here, you know, to show you that today there's a big discussion about, you know, denying the change in climate. All right. So I asked the question: do you think it's true that in ancient times people were aware of the effects on the environment of cutting down trees? Do you think? You know.
I'd like to think they weren't, because then they wouldn't have done it as much.
Well, we're aware of it today, and we still destroy
They still do it. Yeah.
Well, you know, one of the things is that, you know, when you go in the book of Deuteronomy, when you go in to conquer land, you're told not to cut down, you know, fruit trees. You're supposed to cut down as few trees as possible.
Right.
Trees are life. Trees are even like people. There's one quotation which is very hard to understand. They all talk about. And think about, of course, it's perfect for today, Lag BaOmer, because what happens in Israel on Lag BaOmer? Have any of you ever been in Israel on Lag BaOmer?
Barbecues.
No, not barbecues.
Bonfires.
Bonfires. And what do they burn?
Wood.
Good.
Wood. Weeks before. Now, I think because of the fires in Israel, we're not going to have any. But weeks before, you would see the kids, at least where I live in Omer, taking shopping carts from the supermarket and going to building sites and taking logs from those building sites, which they then would go off to wherever they're going to have their bonfires. What they do is they take marshmallows or potatoes. That's very, you know, popular to put potatoes in tin foil and throw them in the fire. That's very popular. Okay. What about Tubal Cain? I deliberately wrote him as a young Jewish entitled man. Do any of you know people like that?
No.
No?
I think I could name one.
Yeah.
Well, what's an A1?
Name one.
Name one. How about name hundreds? But you know,
I don't know that many men that are Jewish.
Okay. So, but why would Jewish men think that they're entitled to begin with? Hello?
They've been raised like that.
Is it raised like
They're over women. They're all, you know, they're the bombs. They're the main ones.
right. They're men. They're men, right? They're men, so they're entitled. And the opposite very often is what they used to call the Jap, right? The Jewish American princess. But the man himself, he was a prince, right? And he was, he was the catch, right?
Right.
Okay, so Tuval Cain sort of talks that way. He thinks very highly of himself, of his civilization, of his, of the talents of his family, right? He's like, I have a lot of yichus, right? I'm okay. I asked the question, do you think he grows at the end of the story? That's an interesting question.
Well, he was upset that she turned her back on him, so no.
So in other words, he lacks understanding. Okay, but what does he say at the very end? Suddenly he was weary, right? He does ask the question, right? And it's please playing on the vanity, because the vanity is another translation of the name Hevel, right? And all of those people's names are Tuval, right? The Yud Bet Lamed, Yuval, Tuval, right? All of the names are, except for Nama, all of them sound like Hevel, which is the vanity. So in other words, it's a play on words there. Maybe I should actually put in there parentheses, Hevel. So, okay. But as we know, Hevel didn't have any people, he didn't have any people. So it's very interesting that all of them are called after him. By the way, I'll explain to you later why, or I'll ask you, why do you think I even wrote a midrash like this? All right. Are you sad that this generation is doomed? Or do you agree they should be punished for Cain's sin? That's a good question.
I think initially, if you go along with it, people may have, valued the family situation more. And if you didn't have other children, it seems like they were sad that their generation was doomed because they didn't have a future.
Okay. Stevie?
Well, since they had decided not to have children, they've already sealed their own fates. But it opens up a question of, should children be punished for their parents' sins? And I don't think so. It's
Okay.
just
Well, by the
my
way,
personal-
what's very sad today, the kind of world that we're leaving behind us for our children and grandchildren, with all the climate changes and everything. It's unfortunately, kids do get punished for their parents' sins, and very often, that's the way of the world. That should they be punished? Absolutely not. But in the reality, very often, they are. Okay. What does it mean that the descendants of humankind will be peasant-like farmers as opposed to sophisticated city dwellers? So, first of all, what does this mean after the great catastrophe that's going to destroy the world, when you have to begin all over again, right? Civilization is wiped out. You have to begin all over. In those days, they didn't have spaceships going to Mars. So the only people left, were Noah and his three sons. And what happened right away, as soon as they land? Noah gets drunk, right?
Right.
And God also tells not God, his three sons, do what they do to him or see him, whatever. And on top of it all, God decides that he has to allow them to start eating meat because it's too hard for them not to. So in other words, the world starts off with, sort of new rules, whereas originally they were vegetarians, and now, now they're allowed to eat meat. But you have here, you're starting all over. So you have sort of like, a tabula rasa. You know what a tabula rasa is? Like a clean slate. Yeah, I'll write the word down here. So oh no, I don't think I could do that, can I? No. Oh, I have to go into my own things. No, oops. No, I can't write here anything. No, of course, why can't I write something? All right, I don't know why I can't write something. So anyway, a tabula, like table, tabula, a table, rasa, clear, erased, everything's erased. So when we start all over, we're not gonna have cities, and we're going to be, probably hunters, gatherers, peasant-like, farmers, whatever.
But not having cities didn't last very long because I think the naturalness of humans is to band together and
Right.
in closer quarters, which develops into cities.
But what did God do when they started building the Tower of Babel? The first thing they did was to confuse them, right? To confuse them by giving them many different languages. God was sort of didn't like the idea of big, tall buildings, skyscrapers, and whatever, that could reach the. And then I asked a question: which, does the world lose something by having the original inhabitants of the earth be wiped out by the flood? And it's an interesting question to ask, really, for today as well. We don't know what's going to happen in the near future with waters warming, and
We're on the brink.
we're on the brink. We don't know how much time there is, but
The rats will survive.
the rats will survive. Okay, that's really
No, and the roaches.
what?
And the roaches.
Right.
The cockroaches, right.
Yeah, they'll survive all of us.
So I'm going to stop here, but I want to share something else with you. But I will stop here. 1 minute. I have to open it up again. How do I open this up? Oh wait, first I have to stop the share. Okay, share and turn off the microphone. You'll understand in a minute why I'm turning it off. For those of you who came in late, stop recording. Okay.
So